So what does it actually mean to live a life of unwavering commitment, real integrity? Especially, when you're looking back at the end of a long journey. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating source. It's all centered around the life and the legacy of Joshua. We're pulling insights from those ancient biblical narratives, Joshua itself, Exodus, Deuteronomy, but also connecting them to later stuff like Acts, Romans, even to Timothy. Our mission here is really to pull out these key principles, things like deep commitment, faithfulness, and what our source calls holiness without worldliness. A life so dedicated, it's kind of untainted by all the fleeting trends and compromises out there. We'll look at how Joshua exemplified this and maybe more importantly, what it could mean for you, for us today.
Yeah, it's more than just history, isn't it? Joshua's story, I think, gives us these profound lessons on consistent character, dedication, and they still resonate centuries later. This isn't just about digging into the past. It's really about finding practical, timeless insights for navigating a world that's, well, constantly pulling at your attention, your loyalty.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We start right off with Joshua's character, which is, frankly, remarkable. What jumps out immediately from our material is this consistent purity, his loyalty, sincere devotion. And it's there from his early days. Like, remember him fighting the Amalekites?
Yeah.
Right through to his old age. He didn't just start strong and then, fizzle out.
And what's really interesting is how the material highlights his observant commander nature. That's the phrase used. But it wasn't just military tactics. It was like this vigilance about temptations, being alert to trials, and just that unwavering obedience to God. This observant nature, it's presented as something vital for everyone. It's like having this constant awareness, a spiritual compass that's always on, a kind of moral alertness.
And his integrity was just solid, ironclad. The material points out his impartial commitment, especially when dividing the land, distributing it among the tribes. Nobody can accuse him of playing favorites or showing bias. And then there's that firm stance against corruption, like the incident with Achan. He didn't shy away from confronting wrongdoing. It really paints a picture of life lived without compromise. It's a whole ethical framework.
Exactly. And the core idea seems to be this complete concentration. Even when he was old, the source notes, much land remained to be possessed. But his commitment didn't drop off, not one bit. This reflects what it calls a sanctified heart, which fundamentally means this inner purity, where your deepest desires, your intentions are all aligned with that higher purpose, a really deep, all-in love for God. It connects back to that ancient idea of circumcision of the heart, an internal, spiritual thing, a transformation.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The material uses this incredibly powerful phrase. Joshua was dead to the world's pollutions, its immorality, its deceitful pleasures, and its perverted patterns. He wasn't looking for human applause, wasn't swayed by worldly politics or, manipulation. It puts it starkly. The world held no attraction for him. So how does someone cultivate that? A life dead to the world, especially for us. I mean, living right in the middle of all these distractions.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you do that? Well, the source suggests Joshua's life was fundamentally shaped in the sanctuary upon Mount Sinai with Moses, which implies his actions weren't just choices. They flowed from this deep, transformative experience of God. To be dead to the world, as it says, it's like having your internal GPS totally recalibrated. All those shiny, distracting things the world offers, fame, pleasure, power, they just don't ping as important anymore because your destination is locked onto something else entirely. It's not just outward behavior, it's a radical internal shift. Grace transforms you from the inside, making that holiness visible, practical.
Right. Okay, so then our sources move on to Joshua's final charge to Israel. And they highlight three crucial points here. First, this undeniable fulfillment of God's promises. Joshua literally reminded them of God's mighty acts fighting for them, giving them the land. He stressed how God had kept every single promise, every word.
Yeah, and that reinforces this consistent theme, doesn't it? God's promises are absolutely solid, rock solid. Like that ancient king said, not one word of his good promise has failed. Which implies that when God says yes, it's a guaranteed yes for us too, covering everything, spirit, soul, body, and just as valid today for those who, respond diligently.
And then there's the flip side, the expectation of unwavering faithfulness from God's people. Because God is faithful, his children should reflect that faithfulness. Our material really stresses this. Faithfulness at all times, whether in the house or outside, in church or beyond, in the office or on the street. It calls it the true mark of a child of God.
And that unwavering faithfulness, it loops right back to that circumcision of the heart idea we talked about. The source uses a great analogy. can't see the wind, but you absolutely see its effects, right? In the same way, it says, the grace of God is known by its result in a person's life, a changed life, a gracious life, one that teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly desires, and instead to live wisely, righteously, devotedly.
And finally, there's this unforeseen fullness of God's performance, which isn't just about blessings and provision. It also includes judgment. It's not only about what God gives, but also about the consequences for disobedience, how God reacts.
That brings up an important distinction. How do we square God's goodness with his severity? Because both are present. Our source is very direct about it. God's dealings with people carry two sides, blessing and judgment. It actually quotes the book of Romans, reminding us, on them which fell severity, but toward thee goodness, if thou continue in his goodness. The takeaway is pretty powerful. If anyone turns from righteousness to unrighteousness, the outcome will not be favorable. There are consequences.
Okay, so then the sources pivot. They look at Israel's history of actually following Joshua's directions. And some of those commands were, well, audacious. Pretty remarkable. Sending spies into Jericho, sanctifying themselves, crossing the Jordan River, getting circumcised right near enemy territory, marching around Jericho's walls silently for days on end. They trusted Joshua, not just the man, but because they believed his instructions came from that divine authority.
And what's fascinating there is that consistent obedience. It wasn't just loyalty to Joshua, the leader. It was obedience to the divine authority behind his words. This really highlights what the source calls the fundamental covenant of saints with the Lord. That deep personal commitment. They saw God's unchanging nature and his word coming through his servant.
And Joshua himself made his own firm commitment, even at 110 years old. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Our material points to this as like unwavering spiritual leadership over his family, even his adult children, a model for all of us. So what does that say about maintaining spiritual oversight today in our world with technology and everything?
It raises a really crucial point about lifelong commitment, doesn't it? The source actually stresses that parents should maintain spiritual oversight over their children, even when they're grown and living independently. Modern tech, it suggests, actually offers new ways to stay connected, to offer guidance. The example set by a godly life, it argues, should still command respect. It should still influence leading your family to look to you, with respect and a willingness to listen.
But then there's this critical turn in the narrative. Our sources highlight what they call the contradictions of the unjust in serving the Lord. When the people all enthusiastically declared, "The Lord our God will we serve," Joshua's response is, well, surprising. He says, "Ye cannot serve the Lord, for he is an holy God." He saw straight through them, saw the superficiality, the lack of real depth in their commitment. It's a powerful moment, prophetic discernment, really.
It really is. Joshua wasn't swayed by their enthusiastic words, by flattery. He confronted that superficial commitment with some blunt truth. He basically said, without holiness in the heart, in daily life, and in your commitment, it's impossible to serve the Lord. Why? Because God is a jealous God who will not share his glory with any idol, person, or self. True service, the material defines, demands genuine repentance and complete obedience, even down to the practical stuff like making things right, restitution, before you even think about offering a gift.
And the material goes even further. It talks about those who change the truth of God into a lie. People who might even participate in church activities but lack real understanding or even natural affection, genuine compassion. It really hammers home the idea that servant that is only from the lips but not backed by righteous character is not acceptable. Actions speak louder. Much louder.
Absolutely. True service to God demands a removal of all contradictions. You can't have it both ways. But then, the consecration of the just is shown right after Joshua's warning. The people resolve, "Nay, but we will serve the Lord." They double down. And this renewed commitment, the source is clear, requires God's sustaining grace. You can't just will it into existence day after day. You need help.
So, wrapping up, our sources really emphasize this faithful consistency in serving the Lord beyond and after Joshua's departure. Joshua, like Abraham, like Moses, he eventually died. And the material makes it plain. The issue is not death itself, but what is done before death and the judgment that follows. It's about the legacy, what you build.
Right. So the critical challenge then becomes, how do we maintain that constancy till death? How do we keep going? Our source connects Joshua's faithfulness to Paul's example, particularly 2 Timothy. Paul's charge to Timothy, preach the word, endure afflictions, make full proof of thy ministry. right to the very end. And it points out, interestingly, that affliction comes from separation from the world, meaning if you refuse to just conform to worldly patterns, you should expect some challenges. It comes with the territory.
And Paul's powerful declaration, I have fought a good fight, I have finished my course, I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness. That's just profound. What's the significance of this crowning and departure?
Well, it speaks to this crown of life that is, as the source puts it, already prepared for those who persevere, who endure. But there's a warning, too. Every opposition that rises comes for the crown. Every challenge is, in a way, trying to knock that crown off your head. So it's this call to hold fast to your convictions, your consecration, so that, as it says, no man take your crown. Don't surrender that commitment because of pressure or difficulty.
Okay, so how do we ensure this consistency then? This devotion and gracious, fresh servanthood, day by day, moment by moment. How do we actually live this out when life gets busy or messy or just complicated?
The source emphasizes that each new day brings a fresh opportunity to serve. It's a daily thing. It urges deep reflection on teachings, giving yourself wholly to them so your spiritual progress is actually evident, visible to others. It calls for vigilance about your life, about sound doctrine, even when that doctrine challenges you, like those messages about restitution, making things right. And there's a critical warning here. When God's word is forgotten and fear is embraced, even a small threat becomes a great obstacle. Just like Elijah, right? He magnified Jezebel's threat and momentarily forgot the power of God he'd just witnessed. It's about keeping that perspective. Focus.
Wow. So we've journeyed through this incredible picture of unwavering commitment in Joshua and the expectations laid out in our sources. From that consistent holiness, unwavering faithfulness, to recognizing that God's performance includes both blessing and judgment, it's clear true service demands getting rid of the contradictions. It demands a deep, active love for something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, and we've seen how grace really enables that steadfastness, that enduring afflictions is actually part of the path, part of earning that crown of righteousness. The big message seems to be, make today count. Stay attentive to those sound foundational principles, and don't let fear overshadow the incredible promises of something greater.
So as you think about this deep dive, maybe consider this. How might embracing this idea, life dead to the world and alive to God, that recalibrated inner GPS, how might that actually transform your daily choices, your long-term commitments, no matter where you are in life, your age, your circumstances? Something to think about.